How we met?
Well,
Where
why
we
don't you
met?
talk about how you met and where you met?
Well, we met briefly at the Flame Club in Duluth. It was about the 1st of April in 1940. Myrtle's nursing class was having a dinner there. Some of them had just returned from St. Peter, Minnesota, where they had taken their special training in psychiatry and neurology. And the next batch was about to go down.
And what were you doing in Duluth?
Well, every 3 months we had a new girlfriend, and three of us,
came to look the trip over.
Cliff Gehring and Pat Stoffergen and I, went up to Duluth with our old girlfriends and looked for new ones. And I found Myrtle. And then we had our first date then back in St. Peter when she had come down there for her training. I was a junior at Gustavus.
So would that be the next year, like the fall?
Pardon me?
Would that be the fall, or is that after
No,
April? That's
No,
summer?
she came down the 1st of April.
Oh.
And I was still a junior then, and we were together then April and May, and about the 1st of June I had to go home and start plowing corn and doing farm work.
At Lake Wilson.
At Lake Wilson. Yes. Then Myrtle came down to visit that summer. Remember, Dad and I were putting together one of these round steel bins.
Hot and
oh,
dry.
and that thing had a few 100,000 bolts that we had to put through from the outside to the inside. One of us worked on the outside and one on the inside. Dad and I. Myrtle stood there talking to us.
And I remember with his dad, but he loved to tell stories, and you know they weren't always the ones you tell in front of ladies when you're up there working and trying to pass time away. So he would first ask if Myrtle was around, and if not, then I think his story was different.
Well, he might shade it a little differently.
Oh, he was a great guy.
He sure was. So then I went back to school that year in the fall, my senior year. And what did you do after you graduated?
What did I do? I went to work.
You went to work at,
St. Luke's.
and what did you do?
I supervised a newborn nursery.
Okay, then that year you came down to St. Peter from Duluth several times. Remember, you came down for my fraternity party in the spring. And that summer, Lyle Sirk and I drove up to Duluth and stayed with you for a few days. Let's see, and Lyle was killed in an airplane accident. That was after the war. It must have been in 1946. But in my senior year at Gustavus, I applied for 2 assistantships. I didn't know what assistantships were till I had visited with a fellow in physics who told me he had just applied for some assistantships, and he explained to me what they were, and I said, well, I'll write off, get some forms. So I applied to the University of Nebraska and the University of South Dakota. I suppose this was in probably February of 1941. I didn't hear anything. I was supposed to hear by 1st of April, and nothing came through. So I hunted in earnest then for a teaching job. I could teach chemistry, physics, the sciences and mathematics, but I hoped to get a job in mathematics because that was my major and certainly my main interest. Well, just about a week before school started, I got a job at Ballatin, Minnesota, teaching no mathematics. And I did teach chemistry, physics, biology, general science, and junior business training. And I didn't even know how to fold a business letter.
Didn't even know how to spell them all.
No, I should say not. The first day of school, the very first day of school, I got a telegram from the University of Nebraska offering me the assistantship that I had applied for. They had one to give that year, and they'd given it to one of their own students, and he was drafted. So they had this one. So the superintendent was very nice. He was a Gustavus graduate. In fact, he was in the Minnesota legislature. And he said if I could stay around for a week or so, he would be glad to release me to go to graduate school. So I taught, I think, 2 weeks. The University of Nebraska hadn't started yet. But the second day of school, I got a special delivery letter from the University of South Dakota offering me the assistantship I had applied for. I applied for 2 and got both of them, but a little late. Anyway, went off to Nebraska, then Lincoln. That was a tough thing to do, to leave, because my mother and dad were involved in a very bad automobile accident in Minnesota. I think it was the 4th of July. And Mother was in a cast from her waist to her knees. One of her legs had been broken in 5 places, and it was the leg on which she had had several operations when she was a child. She had TB of the bone. And her leg just shattered. And so when I left home to go down to Nebraska, I didn't think I'd ever see my mother walk again. But she was flat on her back in this cast. But she came out of it fine and walked without a limp later. But then you came down to Lincoln on the 17th of October after getting a job at,
I'm glad you remember the date. I know.
well, Lincoln General. What did you do at Lincoln General?
Oh, I did some more baby infant nursing.
Yes, you were supervisor of the nursery at
Supervisor
Lincoln General.
there.
And she came on the 17th, and we were married on the 18th. We didn't know anybody in Lincoln yet, except a few students that I had met. So we went to the courthouse and had a couple of the employees there stand up with us. And after the ceremony was over and we left, got halfway down the steps of the courthouse, and what did you ask me?
I said, well, can I have my ring now?
I suppose the judge thought we couldn't afford a wedding
Probably
band.
couldn't, but we
Couldn't,
did.
that's right. So for our honeymoon, we went over to the state capitol and took the elevator to the top of the capitol, gazed over Lincoln, and our landlady, Mrs. Seifert, gave us, what, $10 for a wedding present, or was it $5? Anyway, we went out and
I'm not sure.
had a nice meal for that. We lived at 1121 Q Street. And the apartment Mrs. Seifert owned, and Mrs. Seifert turned out to be Joe Knight's mother. Mrs. Seifert's maiden name was Gass, and she had a daughter named Gretchen, just like Cloris. Maiden name Gass with a daughter, Gretchen. And of course, Bus and Joe Knight ended up living right beside us. We
Next
built
door
together
to
next
us,
door
yeah.
to us, and Georgie Knight was Ken's best friend. They were pals. They were little boys.
They were just as sick as they could be.
One day they disappeared. We couldn't find them. We hunted, and I was over at Wesleyan, and Mom called. She was frantic. The boys had disappeared, and they had searched the neighborhood, couldn't find them. Said, "You better come home and help us." So I tore out of the back door of the main building there, and there were George and Kenneth filling their pockets with cigarette butts. And they were about 4 years old. And I can remember so plainly, George took a hold of the seat of his pants and he looked at me so seriously, just, "I want my own dad to spank me." Oh, they were
Oh, that was what. Yeah, and another time, the grocer, he lived just about 2 blocks from us, and it went across a very busy street in Huntington. And he called to say that he thought he had our boy and another boy in his store, and he had hold them there till we came. They had gone all the way down there without saying anything. And how much money did they have?
Well, they had a $10 bill that
Yeah.
Georgie had found in the house someplace, and they were buying some candy, and the grocer was a little suspicious.
They're going to buy that much candy.
Fred was born at Lincoln General Hospital. I remember I went to school in the morning to teach, and Lloyd Teal had taken you to the hospital. Gaba sent me to the hospital to be with you, and he took my class for me, Dr. Gaba. Well, let's see. Can you think of anything special?
You're remembering more than I, so you keep on.
Then I taught at the university on assistantship 1 year, and then the next year I got an instructorship there. Finished my master's degree mid-year through that second year. But the war had started, and they had drafted so many people that there weren't people available with doctor's degrees to teach. So that's how I got, I just was still working on my master's degree when I got the instructorship. So I was at the University of Nebraska 2 years. And then I met John M. Howie, who was about to retire after many, many years as the teacher of mathematics at Nebraska Wesleyan, which was located in Lincoln. And I visited with him at the mathematics club meeting, Pi Mu Epsilon meeting at the University of Nebraska, and he told me about his retirement. If I was interested, I should apply. Well, of course, that was a Methodist school, and we were going to Trinity Methodist Church. I went out, got some application forms and talked to them out there and got the job. Was hired as an associate professor, no less. Didn't have my doctor's degree. But that was a good move. We then moved out to, let's see, it was 5326 Knox Street. It was an upper and lower duplex. We had the upper. Well, that didn't last very long because I taught 1 year, and I was always, my deferments would come up, and I'd barely get a deferment, and then for 6 months, and then it'd be reviewed, and I never knew when I was going to have to go with the Army. So at the end of that first year, I knew I was going to get called. I just couldn't get deferred any longer, so I took a job at Goodyear. They made self-sealing gas tanks for airplanes. If a bullet would go through them, they'd seal themselves. And I stayed at that job till I was called up. I went to a pre-induction physical down to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. First time I had ever ridden on a train. Went down for that physical. And then I was ordered for induction. Because I was registered in Minnesota, I was ordered for induction at Fort Snelling. So we went up. I quit the job at Goodyear, of course. This was in September of '44. We went up to Duluth, Fred, and Myrtle and I, and then we went down to the Twin Cities so I could be inducted. And Fred and Myrtle stayed there with friends, and I was inducted. Got my uniform, and so I guess I must have been there 3 or 4 days. And then I was shipped to Buckley Field in Colorado for Air Corps. I was assigned to the Air Corps, Army Air Corps. There wasn't any Air Force at that time. Army Air Corps for basic training. And since we were going down through Omaha and then on out to Denver, we got on the same train. Fred and Mom and I got on the same train. And this was in September. And we were standing on the platform talking. I had Fred in my arms. Yes, and waiting for the train to go. And I had to ride with the troops. I had a sleeper, Pullman. And of course, we couldn't afford a Pullman for Mom and Fred. So we stood and talked until it was time to get on the train. And we got on the train, and I asked the porter if I could take Fred with me in the bunk so he could sleep and Myrtle could sit up and be alone. She said sure, so I had Fred in the sleeper with me. And
how old was he?
Well, he was, let's see, Fred was born in April of '43, so he was about 1.5 years. Boy, you could sure talk, plainly. Because about 4 o'clock in the morning, he woke up. I want my mommy. I want my mommy.
Can you imagine this on a troop train?
Oh, like, Fred, be quiet. Couldn't shut him up. So the porter went and got Mom, and I carried him up to the car, end of the car, towards where she was, and she took him in the rest of the night. So then, let's see, we
were transferring.
Oh, this happened just.
Thank goodness Fred was wearing a snowsuit.
I don't know why at that time of the year, but we were in Minnesota.
It was chilly and cold.
But I had Fred in my arms, and when I had to get on the car, Myrtle was going to take him first and bring him back to me. I took and handed him, and he went right over my shoulder and landed right on the brick or cement platform of the car. Oh, we were just.
Thank heavens,
So,
it was all covered with this.
Never hurt him a bit, but oh, he just went right over. Well, you and Fred went to Elsie's then and stayed there briefly just to visit. Then you went back to 5326 Knox Street. Yeah, and I went out for my 6 weeks of basic training. When it was over, we came back from bivouac after 6 weeks of basic training, and our assignments were all posted then where we were going to go. And everyone from California was sent to the routing pool for the 2nd Air Force, which was Lincoln, Nebraska. And I, from Lincoln, Nebraska, was sent to the routing pool for the 4th Air Force, which was Lemoore, California.
Isn't that typical?
Oh, it was done on purpose, of course. Oh, if I could have just gone to Lincoln. I was sick about that. But anyway, I went out to Lemoore. We got to Lemoore, California, and I went down to Los Angeles to meet him. And boy, we came so close to missing each other, but we did get together almost by accident.
Yeah.
Gee,
Well, because you're a relative.
Yes. I had made arrangements with a lady to have a room there when we got back. Well, when we got back, it was in the evening. We rode up from Los Angeles with this lady who brought Myrtle and Fred out. I guess the men must have dropped off in Los Angeles. I don't remember ever meeting them.
I don't think you
But in any case, we got up to Lemoore, and I suppose 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the lady had rented the room to somebody else. Oh boy, here we were, 3 of us, and no place to sleep. And we called the hotel in Hanford, which was the county seat, and no, they didn't have any space. And we walked the streets in Lemoore and didn't find anything, so I finally went back to this lady and told her, we just need a place to sleep. So she fixed up a bed for us, and it was just going to be for a night or two till we find something else. And they slept out on the porch, and then it was just a little porch. There was just about room for a double bed there, and that was it, or a cot. And the 2 of them slept there. They were the Hayes, Mom and Pop Hayes.
Mom and Pop Hayes.
Well, they had rented. They had 2 other rooms, one of which we were supposed to have, but they'd rented another GI couple and a little boy. And the other couple that rented the other room that had that was another GI couple with a little boy.
Yeah.
And here we were, a GI couple with a little boy, taking the 3rd bedroom, which was really their bedroom. Well, it turned out that Mom Hayes thought that was a good deal. They could sleep out on the porch and keep us there, and they'd have a little more money. So we, the 3 couples, and we ate together there when we were, well, the women and the little boys, the 3 boys ate together. And the men would be out to work, but I could come in every night. It wasn't very far out to the base, and it was a good life. Well, that was too good to last.
But they enjoyed Fred, because Fred at this time had quite a little, he could sing a lot of little rhymes and things. And they would have a prayer meeting every once in a while, and they'd go get Fred, whether he's in bed or what, to bring to their meeting, because he could sing Jesus Loves Me. And I thought he should have had a hat to pass, but he didn't.
Well, we thought, well, it was so crowded there, and it would be nice if we could have a little more privacy. So we found a place out about a mile out of town, and that we had no way of getting there other than walking and carrying our groceries and things out a mile out of town. But at least we were alone. But that lasted a month. Oh, we were out there, and we didn't have, they cut off the oven heat. That was all we had, was the oven. Every night after we got done fixing our food, so we couldn't have any heat there, and it was cold. Fred slept with his snowsuit on. Oh, it was cold. So we moved back into town. We moved back to Hayes. It wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Then this isn't over a very long period of time, but a lady who lived about 3 doors away from Hayes, a single lady, and her mother. And this lady worked for the doctor. She was his nurse. And she wanted to take a vacation, and she wanted somebody to stay with her mother, who was an invalid. And she had Myrtle come and work for her during the day. Well, I guess, yeah, that was it. You worked in fact, you worked at night. You spent the night there.
Yeah.
That was it. And Fred and I stayed at Hayes' place. Then you'd come home. You couldn't sleep, of course, because you not much. You had to take care of Fred when I went to work. But anyway, the mother died. She just didn't go on very long, maybe just a week or two. And then Eva was her name.
Oh, yes.
She wanted to take a vacation, get away. She wanted somebody to live in the house. She said, why don't you and your husband just come and live here? And you pay the bills, and that's all. Well, that was great. It was a very nice house. But we weren't there but about 2 weeks, and my orders came to.
It was too good to be true.
Oh, that was heaven. And the orders read that I would leave the base within 48 hours or something like that. That travel by private auto was not authorized. Well, that didn't bother us. We didn't have a car anyway. That I'd be accompanied or joined by no dependents. And I would travel to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and upon arrival thereat, telephone a certain number for instructions. Didn't have any idea where I was going. I talked to the assignment officer in Lemoore, and he said, well, the only thing at Santa Fe is Brunn's General Hospital, and I'm sure you're not going there. So I don't have any idea what you're going to get into. So anyway, I left by train, and the Santa Fe doesn't go to Santa Fe. It goes to Lamy, New Mexico, and there you get off and ride a little bus over to Santa Fe. Well, I got into Santa Fe about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and I could tell that things were a little mysterious. I called my telephone number right away and got a good going over about calling that number and asking why I was calling, and I explained that I had orders to call the number. I was transferred twice, and finally the third party I talked with said, yes, we have your orders. You go to a certain street corner in Santa Fe at 11 o'clock tonight and you'll be picked up. And of course I didn't ask him, well, where am I going, or
They didn't dare.
what's going to happen. So I was picked up and hauled up through the night. We got about midnight, we got into Los Alamos. I still didn't know where I was, of course. Was put in a barracks. Got up the next morning, looked around. Boy, it was pretty around there, but it looked like any other Army base. We had gone through 2 checkpoints to get there. Remember that the car had to stop twice and look at my orders and go on. And I was processed in and told that I was not to apply for OCS, Officers Candidate School. I was not to request a transfer. I was going to stay there till the war was over. Boy, that was music to my ears because the war wasn't going so well then. I was glad to stay there. They also told me that if the project they were working on was successful, the war would be over within a month of the time it was used. And that was hard to believe too. Just 1 month that something could end the war. Well, of course it did. I guess the other interesting thing about being at Los Alamos was our mail was everything we mailed was unsealed, and everything coming in the sensors had cut it open, and everything was microfilmed both ways, incoming and outgoing. The first letter I got from Mom, she said, did you end up at Los Alamos? I hear the engineers have a super secret deal going on there.
Oh boy.
Boy, I could have died because I had never heard of Los Alamos and didn't know how in the world could she have heard of Los Alamos. And then it turned out that we'd spent a lot of time at the USO in Lemoore. That was our entertainment. And there was an Indian couple from New Mexico, a tech sergeant and his wife, that were there a lot too. And when Mom and Fred started showing up at the USO without me, this Indian lady said to Mom, well, I missed your husband. Where is he? Myrtle said, oh, he shipped out a couple days ago. Oh, where did he go? She said, went to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Oh, her eyes lighted up. She said, where's he going to Santa Fe? Well, the orders were mysterious. I was just to go there and call a telephone number. She said, oh, my home is out north of Santa Fe, and there's an old boys' school out there, Los Alamos, and the engineers have a super secret deal going on there. Everybody knows there's something there, but they don't know what it is. But the semis are going, they build a special road up there, a new road, and semi after semi goes up hauling stuff up there. But nobody knows what's going on. Well, that's how Mom found out about it. Well, when the war was over, then it was true it ended within a month, and the time we completed there, the time it was used in Japan.
And what kind of work did you do there?
I was assigned to the Theoretical Physics Division. It was a division that was headed by Hans Bethe, a Nobel Prize winner. And I think there must have been about 10 groups within this division. And I was assigned to a group that was headed by Dr. Robert Serber. Dr. Serber died just a few months ago, and I had a copy of his obituary. He was really a pretty prominent physicist. He was a student of Oppenheimer's out at, I guess at Caltech, or Berkeley, I think it was. And he was the group leader until the war was over, and he was put in a colonel's uniform and sent over there to survey the damage. And I don't think I saw Dr. Serber after that. The assistant group leader, who was Dr. Leonard Schiff from the University of Pennsylvania, took over. And Schiff was turned out to be a pretty prominent physicist too. He wrote a widely used textbook in quantum mechanics. He died very young. He and I were about the same age, but he was good to me, treated me very well. When I needed a 3-day pass to go down to Santa Fe to meet Mom and Fred when they came there, he gave it to me, and when I got down there to meet them, and we started hunting for a place to stay in Albuquerque. We couldn't bring our families within a radius of 100 miles, so they had to stay in Albuquerque. And we beat the streets there looking for a place. Yeah, walk, and nothing, not even a room we could find. So we were staying in a flea-bitten hotel. By the time I had to go back at the end of my first 3-day pass, Mom and Fred were both sick, and I had to carry the last meal to them. I then hitchhiked back to Santa Fe and took the bus up to Los Alamos and got another 3-day pass and went back down. And again, as soon as they were well, we started beating the streets again. We found a place where Myrtle could stay and take care of a little boy and take care of our own little boy. And we stayed with them.
One room and path.
No, that was after we got to Santa Fe.
Yeah,
And after the war was over, we could take our family, bring our families as close as we could get them, and find a room. Well, we then moved to Santa Fe and got this little adobe house, one room, and that was the one room and path. That was 819 Nanita Street, little adobe house. And Mrs. Bellion had built it with her own hands from the backyard adobe clay.
Fred, the only one he had to play with there was a little Mexican girl who lived on the other side of the fence, and her grandparent was taking care of her, and she wouldn't let her get out of the yard. So the kids they were just a little, not very old, but they'd sit and play, and they'd poke things through the fence to the other one to see, or take point a little toy and push a little toy through. And this little girl would wake up early in the morning, and she'd be out there, Hetty, come here, Hetty. And Fred would eat fast so he could get out to play on the other side of the fence.
Down in Albuquerque to see Myrtle and Fred, and got up early in the morning to hitchhike back to Santa Fe to catch the bus up the hill. And I knew that they were to test it that morning, and it didn't go, and it didn't go. Well, I wonder what's happened. Of course, there was a very bad storm, and that delayed the shot. But before we got to Santa Fe, while I was in this car, the whole sky lighted up just like the sun had been turned on for a split second. Then I knew that not only had they tried it, but that it was successful. Well, from that time on, I was anxious to get out of there. It was obvious then the war was going to end pretty soon. But I didn't managed to get out until February of '46. After the war was over and we were still sitting around there trying to get discharges, all of us, they established a university at Los Alamos, and they had, of course, plenty of powerful lecturers there. I remember when Fermi was one of the lecturers, and whenever they'd get done with his lectures, they'd stamp his notes secret, because he was giving out lots of stuff in his lectures that was still classified information. I was discharged at Fort Bliss in El Paso, and Myrtle and Fred were sitting on our bags up in Santa Fe. You know, Fort Bliss is way down the Mexican border, long ways from Santa Fe. So I think I went down on the 12th of February and was afraid to leave the camp because when they called my name, I wanted to be there. And I think it was the 16th finally that I got my discharge. And I'd made arrangements with a fellow to ride with him. He was driving back to Santa Fe, and it was in a very unusual car. It was a 1936 Cord. It was a car that was way ahead of its time. It was front-wheel drive, very, very fancy car. I think they quit making them in 1937. Well, we got back to Lincoln, and about the second day back, I was in the classroom because the semester had started, and they had the physics teacher teaching classes, mine as well as his. And well, that's how it ended there in Los Alamos.
Whether you were back in the classroom teaching or as a
Teaching.
student?
Teaching. Well, in the summers I continued my graduate study.
So you're teaching at Nebraska Wesleyan?
Teaching at Nebraska
going to
Wesleyan.
University of Nebraska?
And then going to University of Nebraska in the summer. Yes. And I didn't finish my degree then until 1954. It was awarded in June. And that was the year I resigned at Nebraska Wesleyan and went to, came to DePauw. Came to DePauw as an associate professor of mathematics.
With tenure then when you came?
Now I got tenure, I got promoted to full professorship in 2 years, in '56, and I got tenure then. I had been promoted to a full professorship at Nebraska Wesleyan, I think when I got out of the Army. I don't remember exactly when, but when I came back, I think I was given a full professorship. I went there as an associate professor. And then I became chairman of the department in 1960. Dr. Greenleaf retired then. Dr. Eddington had been chair until I think 1953.
Did he retire then?
He retired in '53. He stayed on and taught a couple of years before going to Coe College and teaching for a few years there. And Greenleaf taught a few years here after he retired. And then Clark Arnold retired, I think, in '64. And he taught a year or so after he retired. But Eddington, Greenleaf, and Arnold were the big three in the department for many years.
Huh. Now when you left after the war, were you able to talk about anything you'd done at Los Alamos?
Well, for a long time I couldn't, because we were told that it would take a long time to declassify this information and we shouldn't talk about it. And they sent us all from Los Alamos down to Fort Bliss. And the people down at Fort Bliss in the processing center were told not to question us about what we had done, because it was all classified work. I remember one thing they did do, though, is they really put pressure on us to stay in the reserves, the Army reserves, particularly the inactive reserves. You couldn't go wrong there. Your time would accumulate. You didn't have to go to drills, nothing, just accumulate time, and then when you retired, you would have a military retirement income. Well, I wasn't interested, and I said no. Boy, am I glad I did, because when the Korean conflict came along, the first ones called were the inactive reservists, and they were taken right out of school. I had them in my classes. See, a lot of these fellows I had in class were about my age. They were drafted earlier than I was and hadn't finished, and so they came back to school and were there at the same time. as the Korean conflict came up. So our salaries were so low. When I went to Nebraska Wesleyan, I think I got $1,800. When I came out after service, I think maybe $2,100. And even as late as 1954, I think my salary was about $4,000. And I came to DePaul for, I think, $5,200. So that was an incentive to leave Nebraska Wesleyan because it was a big raise.
So how did you feel about moving to Greencastle?
Well, we came here for an interview on the 15th of March, and it had rained all the way over here. Oh, this place looked gloomy. And the streets were so narrow, and I can remember plainly Mom saying, "You could just as well turn around and go home. We're not coming to this place." But I was interviewed, and I liked Dr. Greeny very much, and President Humbert, I visited with him. The last thing when I left, President Humbert said, "Now, we're going to make you an offer. We want you to come. But we want you to think about it for a month, and then we'd like to have an answer. But you'll get an offer." Well, I was glad he didn't say, you have to make up your mind now, do you want to come or not? Because I could have told him right then, no, I didn't want to come.
Go ahead.
Should I go?
Yeah, I think it's Matthew.
Oh, okay. So we went home and we thought about it, and I had a good friend who was in the history department at Nebraska Wesleyan, and he was an Indiana University graduate and knew about DePaul.
Uh-huh.
And we were good friends. He had taught me all the Masonic work I knew. There in Nebraska, you didn't learn out of a book. It was mouth to ear.
Uh-huh.
And Graham Behringer said, I said, "I'd hate to see you leave here, but," he said, "for your own good at your age, you really ought to accept that job. DePaul is a good school." So at the end of the month, I accepted the position. So I had to give up a trip to Europe. Remember Neil Slack and I were going to take a group to Europe? Oh boy, I'd never been to Europe, and that was great. But when I resigned, I lost the trip to Europe.
That was okay.
That was okay. We spent the summer in Minnesota then. We spent some time at the farm, then we went up to Duluth. And that was good because that was the year my dad died in 1954. And we'd spent a lot of time together out at the farm. They were winding things up at the farm. He had bought a house in town. With another man, I built a garage in town for Dad and Mom. And they were going to move in the 1st of November. And Dad died on the 18th of October, our 13th wedding anniversary. So, let's see. We haven't anything more to tell. Pardon me? Oh yes, it's time to eat. But let's finish up.
No.
What more do you want?
Well, let's see. So Ken was born in
Ken
46.
Ken was born in 46, and he was born at Bryan Memorial Hospital. And then we came here, and we lived at, what was it, 718 South Locust Street. It's where Holgate Hall now stands.
Uh-huh.
We lived there. It was a university house that we rented. Then I think about, we were there about 3 months. Back in December, we moved to a house we bought at 1023 South College. It wasn't quite finished. There were no kitchen cabinets, and the base, the trim, door trim, base trim, and all were to be completed. I did much of it, but I had the cabinets built by Kenny Vaughn, from whom we bought the house. Then our third son, Glenn, was born when we lived there, 1023 South College, and he weighed 4 pounds and 4 ounces, quite premature. He was born at Putnam County Hospital. Then, let's see, is the next year, 1957, we got our lot out in the Haskell addition by the observatory, and we had our house built by Charlie Hendricks. The contract price on the house was $15,700. But I did a lot of the work myself. I finished the upstairs. I did all the linoleum work, and that's floors, counters, and also did the wiring. But $15,700.
Huh. It's 707 High Ridge where we are
707
right now.
High Ridge, right. Planted all the trees. Boy, there wasn't a stick of wood here. I had leave in 65, 66. It was a special leave to work for the National Science Foundation. We had NSF institutes here, I think starting in 1959. And in a couple of years I directed the institute. And the fellow who was in charge of the whole program in Washington, D.C., Bill Morrell, invited me to come for a year to work for the foundation in the institute program. So we went to Washington for the year, took 2 cars and a trailer and a U-Haul trailer and a boat trailer, and took our boat with us to Washington. Went by way of Oberlin to pick up Kenneth. Well, I was working in the institute program, institute section of the foundation, summer institutes. It was nice work. I really enjoyed it. I did a lot of traveling. I could go any place I wanted to visit institutes. And they wanted me to stay on permanently. Well, I really enjoyed the work, but I didn't want to leave teaching. I really enjoyed that too. But to entice me even more, they gave me a trip to South America. I'd never been out of the country before except to Canada, and that was hardly out of the country when you live in Minnesota. So I went down to visit some NSF projects in Lima, Peru, in Santiago, Chile, and Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This was in 1966, I guess. Must have been. 65, 66 was the year we were there. In 1967, I went back. We went back to the foundation. I worked for them. We lived right near there, and Glenn, you were up at Camp Voyager that year.
Yeah.
First week you were there, you broke your arm. But you were there for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
8 weeks. You were 11 years old. Yeah. Well, let's see. That was the cottage. When we came back, then we started building the cottage. And by I remember Thanksgiving Day. Let's see. That was on a Thursday. Friday we started putting up the framework, and by Sunday night we were shingling, and of course the foundation, the blocks had been laid up and all, and it started snowing a little bit. We finished the shingling though before we quit that night. So we kept the cottage all those years. We sold it this year in 1997 on the 28th of March. I guess we felt a little bad about leaving it, but on the other hand, we had it for 30 years, and we enjoyed it those 30 years. And it was getting to be a bit of a burden to keep it up. Well, but I think one of the highlights of our life was the year we spent in Munich. We'd had the NSF support institutes for junior high school and elementary school teachers of science at DePauw, starting, I think, 1959. And then after I'd worked for the National Science Foundation, I found out that Mike Frodema, a friend of mine, had been conducting institutes for the overseas teachers in Japan. So I thought, gee, why not have one for the overseas teachers in Europe? So I proposed that, and it was accepted. So we had an institute in Munich for the overseas teachers, those in the European theater in the Middle East. That was in 1968, the summer '68. It was successful, very successful. So the summer of '69, it was renewed, and we had another one there. Well, it turned out that one of the people high up in the administration of these overseas schools was a Gustavus friend of mine named Carl Gustafson. Gus came over to visit us in the 1968 institute. He came from Karlsruhe, where their headquarters were, and said they could use some help. They were instituting a new program in mathematics and wondered if I'd be interested in working for the system for a year. So I asked for a leave and got a leave. And so when we came over in 1969 for the institute, we just stayed over there then. and spent the year 1969-70 there. That was really a very, very good year. We had excellent living quarters. I did a lot of traveling, but also Glenn and Myrtle and I did a lot of family traveling too. So that turned out to be probably one of the best years of our lives. At least for me, it surely was. Then we were a director asked to go with the faculty as faculty director of the Freiburg program in 1977. So that was another good experience. We went to Freiburg, Germany, and with 31 or 2 students, and spent January and February, I guess maybe some March. Anyway, we ended up with the last month of our program in Aix-en-Provence in France. We had a good experience there. Southern France was very interesting. We had not been there before. And we saw so many things down there. Nîmes, Arles, Marseille, and the Pont de Garde, and Avignon. Oh, it's a very, very interesting area to visit. And then at the end of the program, Dolores came over. We met her in Marseille, and then we drove up to Sweden and did a little visiting there. So that was really a nice experience. Then, let's see, as a result of this, this connection with the Department of Defense, in 1977, Paul Kissinger and I were talking with Wayne Sabin here in Greencastle and wondered if there'd be a chance of getting a program started for the students over there. And Wayne said he thought it'd be possible and he would do a little work on that end. And Paul wrote a proposal, sent it over, nothing happened. But since we were over there in Freiburg in 1977, we went up, Myrtle and I went up to Karlsruhe and talked to Gus. And said, Gus, what happened to that proposal we sent over? Well, he hadn't seen it. So I remember yet as we were sitting in his office, he said, Hunter, get that proposal out, let's look at it. So Hunter got the proposal and Gus said, do something about it. And it was granted. So the program was held the first year in the summer of 1977 in Karlsruhe. Well, we had just gotten back from our Freiburg program, so I didn't go that year. John Anderson and Paul Kissinger went. But then after that, I went every year for many years. We went, had another year. The second year, as 1978, we're in Munich. And they closed the dormitory there, so it was the same dormitory we lived in back in 1968 and 69. So they had a dormitory in Vicenza, Italy. So the program was moved to Vicenza. Now this was called, we named the program Challenge. And we would have 36 students from all over. They would come mainly from Spain and Italy and Germany and England. But there would always be some from Turkey, and we even had some from Bahrain and various places. Wherever we had schools over there in Europe and the Middle East, we'd get students, 36 of them. And these were all juniors, finished their junior year and they had 1 year left. So we had the program then 5 years in Vicenza, and they closed the dormitory there. Then we went to Torrejon in Spain. They had a dormitory there yet. And the program continued in Torrejon until the Spanish kicked us out of there. We not only lost the dormitory, we lost the whole base. That was, I think, in 1988 was the last program there. Then in 1989 we went to Erding, which was just out of Munich. Myrtle didn't come over all those years, but many of the years she came. You were in Vicenza a couple of years. You were in Erding, and you were at Madrid. We were in Erding 1 year. We had it wasn't a dormitory there, but it was nice facilities. I guess it was sort of a R&R place. I don't know what it was really. It was different. Then we went to England. In 1990, we were in High Wycombe. It was London Central High School was there, and they had dormitories there, so we were at High Wycombe. It was just out of London, a short distance. Then that was 1990, 1991, and from then on till the program closed, we were at Lakenheath. And I think the program, I didn't go the last few years. I think the program ran for 18 years. So I guess through 1994 was the last. So we had some really good times in those programs. And all of it really came about as a result of those institutes that we had starting in 1968. If it wouldn't have been for getting those institutes, none of this would have happened. And if Carl Gustafson wouldn't have been over there and as a key person in the administration, it wouldn't have happened either.
So what about your winter term projects? When did they start?
The winter term at DePauw started in 1971, and in 1972, Mom and I took a group of students to the island of Anguilla. Now, part of the students were medical students, and the others were in a building team. So we had a joint program with the Greencastle district of the United Methodist Church. There was a Greencastle district, and there isn't one now. And we took this group of students to Anguilla, and Mom and another nurse and some pre-med students worked at the hospital there, little hospital. And the rest of us, the building team and I, with our people from the district, the non-students, laypersons, built a church hall for one of the Methodist churches. I think there are 4 Methodist churches on the island. This particular one didn't have a church hall. And the church hall was really the center of their life, the people there. We had a good experience there. We visited St. Martin's when we were there. So that was the first year. Then for the next 4 years, I think there's 5 years altogether, we took students, let's see, there's Anguilla and Jamaica and Roatan, that's an island in the Bay of Honduras, and Utila, which is another island in the Bay of Honduras, and then Haiti. So it was 5 years. So it was 72, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then 1977, I quit because that was the year we went to Freiburg in January. And Fred Lamar, the university chaplain, continued the program and built it up to where he had several groups going every winter term. Those were good years. We really, I think, did some good. We worked awfully hard because each place we went, we built something, and it required long hours of work and heavy work.
And when did you retire from DePauw?
Retired I was chair until 1984, so let's see, I had 24 years, I guess, I was chair or head of the department. First I was head of the department, then I was chair of the department. And I retired in 1986. I taught a year, just a course each semester. Excuse me. I think the last I taught was one semester in 1988. And that year we were asked to take a alumni group to Australia and New Zealand. So in the fall of 1988 we went over there. We had a great time there. We had a good group and we had very good experience. Well, since that we have taken a cruise to Alaska, 2-week cruise, and we have had a wonderful trip to China. That was interesting, and it's a good thing we did it when we did because it was really quite exhausting. A lot of walking and a lot of stairs. particularly at the Great Wall. And then we had a nice vacation in Hawaii. And this last January, we took a cruise in the Caribbean. So we've done some traveling since we retired. In addition to traveling around the country, we've had several very, very satisfying family reunions. The first one was in 1991 when we had our 50th. That was at Houston Woods, and the whole family was there. All the children and grandchildren. Then 2 years later, we had 2 or 3 years later, I forgot what year it was, we had a reunion in Minnesota. Well, hi, little boy. Hi.
You can come in. We're just about
Yeah.
done.
Okay. We can come in.
Hi, Matthew.
Wanna go in?
So we had a reunion up in Minnesota, part of it at Slayton and in Tracy, down my home territory. Then we went up to Duluth and spent a couple of days up
Matthew, it's right
in
here.
Myrtle's home territory. Then we went up to Lutsen Resort and spent a few days there. That was our second reunion. The third reunion was out on the Olympic Peninsula. That was last year, wasn't it? That was 1996. I think that 94 would have been the year in Minnesota. And then the Olympic Peninsula was wonderful. We spent a week out there and had beautiful weather. Oh, such a nice time. And visited not only the Olympic Peninsula, but spent one day over in Victoria. Then this year we've just wound up another vacation. Not another vacation, another family reunion. It started in Greencastle when the three sons came back with their families to attend the fall Greencastle High School reunion. And after the reunion, we had a gathering with Cloris and her daughters and their husbands. And then we went on down to Clifty Falls. That was just last week.
Yeah.
Clifty Falls, we spent a couple of days there, one very wet day. And that brings us right up to the minute. I started actually building clocks back in about 1966 or 67. I wanted a project to do in the shop, and somebody suggested I build a grandmother clock. I didn't know what a grandmother clock was. But anyway, I built one. And then when we were in Europe, clocks over there were so plentiful and so inexpensive. So we bought a few clocks over there. And then since that, I've just, whenever I had a chance to pick up a clock, I've done so, and I've built several. And I took a clock repairing course the year I had a leave. I guess it was about 1985, the year before I retired. I had a sabbatical leave, and I took a semester off to take what the university called pre-retirement leave. It was the first one they issued, and the Board of Trustees acted favorably upon my request to have such a leave. Took the clock repairing course and have done a lot of clock repairing, not as a business, but just as a hobby. I suppose I have repaired, well, let's see, probably 600-700 clocks. I have a record of most of them that I've repaired.
Oh,
I didn't
good.
start the first day, but I started now keeping good track of them, and I'm sure I've done 600 or 700. How's my pal? Oh,
Well,
you're so
in
warm.
an hour and 7 minutes. It's pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah.
We fade out.
Yeah,
Save.
you can fade out now.
Say bye-bye, Matthew.
Bye, Matthew.